Morning. It's Friday, January 5th, and I will be reading Genesis 13 through 17. Genesis chapter 13. That Abraham went up from Egypt, and he and his wife and all he had, and Lot with him, to the south. Abraham was very rich in livestock, in silver and gold, and he went on a journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. And Abraham called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, who went with Abraham, had flocks, herds, and tents. Now the land was not able to support them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's flock and the herdmen of Lot's flock, and the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelt in the land. So Abraham said to Lot, Please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, then I will go right, or if you go to the right, then I will go left. And Lot lifted up his lifted up his eyes and saw the plain of Jordan, and that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden the Lord like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as you go to Resort. So Lot chose for himself the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. And Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom became uh, exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. And the Lord said to Abraham, after Lot had separated from him, Lift up your eyes and now look from the place where you are northward, southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see, I give to your children and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants like the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then descendants also could be numbered. Arise and walk through the land, its length and its width I give you. Then Abraham moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and he built an altar there to the Lord. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arak, king of Eleazar, and Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of the nations, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and Bersha, king of Gomorrah, and Sibah, king of Admah, and Sheber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Belta, that is Zor. All these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and the 13th year they rebelled, and in the 14th year Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with them came and attacked the Rephaim and the Ashtaroth, Karnaim and Zuzim in Ham, the Eam in Shaviv and Kiddarim, and the Hortites in the mountain of Seir, and El Paran, which is in the wilderness. They turned back and came to in Masphat, which is Kadesh, and they attacked the county of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who dwelt in the land of Tannar. Then the king of Sodom and the king of Gomorrah and the king of Admah and the king of Zeboim and the king of Bela, that is Zor, went out and joined together in battle in the valley of Siddim against the Chedorlaomer king of Edom, Tyndale, and the nations of Amsphar and the king of Shinar, and Arok, the king of Eleazar, and the four kings against the five. Now, the valley of Siddim was full of asphalt pits, and the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and some fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains, and then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, Abraham's brother's son, and dwelt in Sodom, and the goods, and then they departed. Then the one who escaped came and told Abraham the Hebrew, for he dwelt by the terebinth tree of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aner, and they were allies with Abraham. And now, when Abraham heard his brother was taken captive, he armed his 380 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided forces against them by night, and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hoboa, which is the north of Damascus. So they brought back all the goods, and they also brought back his brother Lot's goods as well as the women and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley, after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer, the kings who were with him. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought bread, and he was the priest of God the Most High. And he blessed them and said, Blessed be Abraham of the God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tenth of all. And now the king of Sodom said to Abraham, Give me the persons and take the goods for yourself. But Abraham said to Sodom, I raise my hand to the Lord God the Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will take nothing from the thread to a sandal strap, and I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say I have made Abraham rich, except only the young men that have eaten the portion of the men who went with me. Anar, Eshcol, Mamre, let them take their portion. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abraham, saying, Do not be afraid, Abraham, for I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. But Abraham said to the Lord, Will you give me, seeing that I go childless? The heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus. Then, then Abraham then Abraham said, Look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born to my own house is my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body will be your heir. Then he brought him outside and said, Look now towards the heavens, count the stars if you are able to number them. He said, So shall your descendants be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. Then he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit. So Abraham said to the Lord, How shall it be that I will inherit it? So he said to him, "Bring me a 3 year old heifer, a 3 year old female goat, and a 3 year old ram, a turtle dove, a young pigeon." Then he brought all these things to him and cut them in two down the middle, and the place each opposite the other, and cut the birds in two, and the vultures came down on the carcasses, and Abraham drove them away. And now the sun was going down, and a deep sleep fell on Abraham, and behold, the horror of a great darkness fell on him. And then he said to Abraham, "Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and serve them, and I will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge, and afterwards they will come out with great possession. Now as for you, you shall go up to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried at a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall return, for the iniquity of the Amorites is yet not complete." And it came to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between the pieces. On that same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, "To your descendants I have given this land from the river of Egypt to the great river of the Euphrates, the Kernites, the Kurzites, the Katamarites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Gishites, and the Jebusites." Genesis chapter 16. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, had bore him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarah said to Abraham, "See now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And Abraham heeded the voice of Sarah. Then Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband, and husband Abraham to be his his wife. And Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, so he went to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. And then Sarah said to Abraham, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my maid unto your embrace, and she saw that she conceived, and I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between you and me." So Abraham said to Sarah, "Indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please." And when Sarah had dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. Now an angel of the Lord found her by the spring of the water in the wilderness, and by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said to her, "Sarah, where where's your maid? Where have you come from, and where you are going?" And she said, "I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarah." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her." Then the angel said to her, said Then the angel of the Lord said to her, "I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for a multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. And he shall be a wild man, and his hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand shall be against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren." And then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees." For she said, I have also here seen him who sees me." Therefore the well was called Ber Leshem, observed it between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abraham a son, and Abraham named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. And Abraham was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abraham. Genesis chapter 17. So when Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said to him, I am Almighty God, walk before me and be blameless, and I will make my covenant between you and me, and you will multiply and I will multiply you exceedingly. Then Abraham fell on his face before God, saying to him, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations, and no longer shall I call your name Abram, but you shall be called Abraham, for I made you the father of many nations, and I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you, and I will establish my covenant between you and me, and between your descendants after you and their generations, for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and your descendants after you, and I also give to you your descendants after you the land which you are a stranger, the land of Canaan, and an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said to Abraham, As for you, you shall keep my covenant, and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between you and me and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign as a covenant between you, between me and you. And he who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generation, he who is born of your house or bought with money from a foreigner who is not your descendant, he who is born of your house, who is bought with your money, must be circumcised. My covenant shall be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant, and the uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of the foreskin, that person shall be cut off from the people, for he has broken my covenant. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed in his heart. Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old, and Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. And then God said, No, Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a child, and you will call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you, and behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and multiply him exceedingly, and he shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But for my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. And then he finished talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. So Abraham took Ishmael, his son, who was born in his house, who were bought with his money, every male child among the men of Abraham, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin that very day. And God said to him, Abraham was 99 years old, and he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he circumcised him. in the flesh of his foreskin, and that in that same day Abraham was circumcised, and his son Ishmael and the men of his house, born in his house, brought money from a foreigner, was circumcised with him.